So welcome to another fantastic Faena Rose conversation. Tonight, we're here to have a very important conversation and to celebrate the new book, How to Menopause. Take charge of your health, reclaim your life, and feel even better than before. With who? Well, the one and only Tamsen Fadal. Tamsen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Congratulations on the success of the book, your PBS documentary, and so much more. Give us a little sneak peek of what we're going to talk about tonight, but don't give away too much.
I won't give away too much, but we're going to talk everything menopause. I think it was so important to create a girlfriend vetted guide, but it's also for the guys too, because there is a lot to cover. And it's not just menopause, it's what happens before and after menopause. So we're going to cover the whole gamut.
I'm glad you said that because, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm incredibly interested in this topic. My wife is of that age, and I think that having a deeper understanding of what she's going through will have, allows us all have more empathy and to assist better.
It makes a huge difference,
Absolutely.
Huge difference.
So thank you so much. As we like to say, get ready, strap in for another fantastic Faena Rose conversation. Thank you, Tamsen.
Thank you.
And so, for me, selfishly, I'm really excited about tonight. And this night has been, Tamsen, I think we reached out 5 months ago. I think it might have been maybe even more. So, good things come to those who wait. We're here. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to have a conversation for about 40 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to questions, right? We really want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So, let's get right into it. A little bit about our moderator for the evening. She's a dear friend. She's a fellow Faena Rose member. She's a Peabody Award-winning journalist, author, and corporate speaker who took the world by storm in 2017 when her TEDx talk on authenticity went viral. And to this day, it has over 24 million views and has been translated into over 13 languages. As a thought leader, she now gets hired to speak at some of the top companies in the world like Microsoft, JP Morgan, Accenture, helping leaders and organizations embrace change. In the last decade, Mariana has worked at Univision and NBC News as an anchor national correspondent covering devastation in places like China, the Syrian border, Haiti, and chasing cartels in Mexico. Glad you're still with us. She's interviewed President Biden, the Pope, and the King of Spain, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mariana Atencio.
I was about to jump in before when he was talking about you, so should I go on stage or not? Good save, though. Ladies, are we ready to have a good time tonight? Yes? And the gentlemen, can I ask you to raise your hands? The gentleman in the room. Can we give him a big round of applause as well? Thank you for being here, because this conversation is about community. It's about allyship. This was a conversation I was talking to Tamsen before we got Mike tonight. The work that she's spearheading made me talk to my mom about menopause for the first time. So it can feel like such a lonely experience. But tonight we say no more, thanks to this woman that I'm about to introduce. So please put your hands together to Emmy Award-winning journalist. She is a filmmaker, a menopause advocate, and the author of How to Menopause, Tamsen Fadal, everybody.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
Hi.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, like Pablo said, I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A, because I know you have so many things on your mind, and I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So think about them, raise your hands. No tengan pena, as we say in Spanish. Tamsen, a little more about you, because you also produced, and I recommend that everybody watch this, the PBS documentary, The M Factor, Shredding the Silence on Menopause. and you've become a leading voice on just destigmatizing this conversation. How to Menopause is a practical, girlfriend-vetted guide to navigating this stage of life with confidence, health, empowerment. And by the way, this stage of life is perimenopause,
Yes.
menopause, postmenopause, so it involves all of us. Tamsen, what inspired you to write this book? First of all, what was that aha moment?
Yeah, my aha moment started on the bathroom floor of the ladies' room after an intense hot flash, actually. So I used to do the evening news in New York City, and I was doing that for about 15 years. And there was one particular night where I was having problems. I was looking at the teleprompter, which we would read, and I'd look at a word, and I'm like, I know that word, but it's not coming out of my mouth, so I'd skip it. Later, I found out that was called brain fog. And this particular night, we were in a commercial break. We're all chatting, and all of a sudden, I got this intense heat that came from the inside and just sweat everywhere. My scalp, under my arms, my boobs, everywhere. And I'm like, what is going on? I feel like I'm going to pass out. And my heart was racing, and I excused myself and went to the ladies' room because I didn't think I was going to be able to make it through. I was like, am I going to faint? What's happening? And I just went down to the floor of the bathroom to just cool my whole body off. I went to doctors a few weeks later, and I finally got a note in my patient portal that had 4 words in it. That's it. It said, in menopause, any questions? That was all I heard from my doctor. That was it. Remember, this is 5 years ago now, so nobody was really talking about menopause. And I set out on a quest to figure out what was going on with me because I was chasing all these symptoms around thinking, is it dementia? Do I have a heart problem? Like, what's wrong with me?
How scary. You're a news anchor and you can't even read some words on the prompter.
That's the whole job. And so I realized that this was something that nobody was talking about. And I read a statistic that said 1 billion women will be in menopause or perimenopause by 2025, which is this year. And I couldn't believe no one had ever brought that up to me. And any time I'd been to doctors, any time I'd done a blood work, no one had ever brought that up to me. Any time during my mid-30s into my 40s.
And this is when you say, I'm a well-studied, well-informed woman who's connected to the world, and this, there are no tools at my disposal.
Right, and I'm reading stories every night talking about all sorts of things. You listen to the news, you hear something about diets or heart disease, or you talk about all these different things, studies that are going on, cholesterol, and never once did I say the word menopause, and I certainly had never even heard the word perimenopause. And so I found that really shocking, very scary. I lost my mother to breast cancer when she was 51 years old, and I was 20 years old at the time. So it was never a conversation I had, and I thought, well, maybe that's why. But then more and more women that I would speak with would say, well, I never talked to my mom about it either. I never heard anything. And I realized that we've been a society that has been shamed into silence about this as women, thinking that our best years are behind us, that somehow we become invisible and irrelevant if we're not, if we're not in a place where we're in our reproductive years, and that's just simply not the case.
Wow. And I'm sorry about your mom.
I
know she's watching us from above.
Thank you.
So there's so much, as you said, stigma, misinformation, or just no information.
Yeah.
What are some of the myths that you set out to debunk with this book?
Well, I think I thought, I go to my doctor tells me what to do, and then I do that, right? That's pretty much how that's what I thought you did. And what I realized that in studying this and doing the documentary and creating it and talking to 2 different doctors by their own admission, many doctors are not taught this in medical school. Some have up to maybe a month of training in medical school, if you can imagine that. So you're walking into the doctor's office and it is not their fault. And I always want to say that because I think it's very important to note it's not doctors' fault. It's the system is broken in so many ways. And the fact that doctors haven't been trained about something like this because women in midlife really were not priorities in any sense of the word. And I think the other thing I really wanted women to know in this is that this isn't about, when you're old or that you've got to suffer through this. There are actual real solutions out there that we haven't talked about. And so we're finally hearing that conversation. And then I guess the final one is that, perimenopause you can start seeing some of these symptoms in your mid-30s, late 30s. So I think it's really important for women to be aware of that so they're not chasing down symptoms thinking there's something else wrong with them.
I can't believe, first of all, that doctors aren't trained in this for more than a month.
Right.
And if you look at You know, I do lots of events, conferences all over the
Sure.
world. The longevity conversations, the conversation all of us are having, that we're going to
Everybody
live
has
to
it.
120, etc.
Yeah.
But then this is an important conversation that we need to have in order to get there, and not
Yes.
think that this is sort of the end of the road. You know?
Well, and that you bring up such a good point, because that is what's really important. It's not about whether or not you can get through hot flashes or, belly fat or sleepless nights. It's about the long-term health effects and, and what you're looking at down the line. You want to make sure you're taking care of your bones and your heart and your brain health. And all of that starts now, if not sooner. And so that was really important for me. It was important. I'm not a doctor, so it was important for me as a journalist to find the experts and the voices in this space and then talk about things, not just menopause. I mean, menopause is one part of it, but perimenopause can be up to 10 years. So you can be talking about some of these symptoms for up to 10 years before menopause, which is just one day. And then everything else is considered postmenopausal, but it really is. You never leave menopause. You're always in it the rest of your life after you hit it.
This book is been referred to as the girlfriend vetted guide. So how did you make sure that this book, and I love the cover, by the way, it's
Oh, thank you.
spectacular. How
Thank
did you make sure that this book feels, relatable, personal, not scary, just like literally a book that you want to give a girlfriend?
Thank you. I didn't want it to be scary, because it's not something we should be afraid about. It's something we should know about so that we can get into these amazing years. I mean, look at this room. Get into these amazing years. There are some amazing years ahead. I talked to a lot of different women all throughout the book and had their stories, and I think that's what really made it relatable, because they're real stories. Like, I didn't change their words. I mean, these are raw emotions and things they're going through, and then how they got to the other side or what they're feeling now. And then I shared a lot, much to the chagrin of my husband back there, Ira, about our own personal story. So there's a sex chapter that I did not let him see before the book was published. But, I think it's really important to not be afraid and talk about these things. And we've whispered these things for way too long, and we've not been taken care of, and we've suffered, and we've been afraid to ask for help. And so it was really important that a woman can take this book and walk into the doctor and maybe say, like, look, this might be what's going on with me. Can you help me and give me some answers? Because doctors didn't go into that profession to not care. They care a lot.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot that they weren't helped with themselves. And so I wanted women to be able to take charge of their health, because I think that's half the battle.
Well, you have the book, ladies, so walk with the book into your doctor's office as a prompt. You mentioned sex in the book.
Yes, a lot.
I told Tamsen, it's like you've made menopause sexy.
Oh, thank you.
Which I love this concept. The second that I saw women like Halle Berry, like posting with the book, I'm like, oh my God, she's made this something that, again, is not scary, and it doesn't have to mean the end of your life. Did you set out to do that, or was it something that just happened?
No, I set out to find answers for myself. First of all, we put together a documentary called The M Factor, and that was released in October before the book came out. And when we went out to look for funding for the documentary or look for a place for it to air on television, we were told there's no audience for that, and it's a niche group that would be interested in something like menopause. I know. And I was like, oh, maybe you're right. Because you hear something like that enough times, you don't know what to,
You start to believe it.
You start to believe it.
Yeah.
But we kept pushing forward because we'd heard from enough women that needed help. Right? Every time I would put a video up, I would just get an influx of questions and solutions that would come in and conversations. And so I didn't set out to do that. I set out to find answers first for myself, and then to share those answers. As journalists, you find a story, and then you keep asking questions. And the more I asked questions, the more I realized we had so many few answers. We didn't have the answers that we needed, and women were really suffering and didn't know where to go. And then the book, I started after I did the documentary, I was at the same time working on the book simultaneously. And in the book, I wanted to go beyond menopause. So I start talking about perimenopause and the symptoms. There's 34 plus symptoms of menopause, and then go into some of the solutions, whether it's hormonal, non-hormonal, and then talk to different experts, whether we're talking about sleep or nutrition or diet or sex, brain health. And then I really wanted to go into mindset and really understanding that next phase of our lives, because I didn't have a roadmap for any of that.
Yeah.
I never had anyone to talk to about it, and I feel like a lot of us haven't had that ability to feel comfortable talking about it, and I really wanted to open up that conversation. So yeah, it's surprised me where it's taken off, and I'm so grateful on one hand. On the other hand, I feel like there's just so much more work to do.
And at the same time, your story is a reminder for all of us that if you know in your gut that there's something there, if you're living
Yeah.
through it, if your girlfriend
Yeah.
is living through it, I love that it's us giving ourselves these tools that we
Yes.
need, because nobody else is going to do it for us.
No, nobody else is.
So fight for that product, for that idea, for that pitch that you know in your heart has an audience. This is a great
for that
example of
documentary.
that. Yes,
that
yes.
No one wants to. I interviewed Halle Berry for my podcast, The Tamsen Show, and I was so amazed by her ability to speak out about it. So we're seeing women from all over talking, whether it's celebrities, whether it's politicians, whether it's business women. And so I think it's really, really important that all of our voices get louder and louder, wherever we are, whatever community that we can talk to, whatever younger woman we can speak with. It's just so important.
So we mentioned the amazing Ira, who's here. Hi, Ira.
By the way, I just want to tell everybody, poor Ira. He every time he's like, "Are there going to be any other men there?" And I'm like, "I don't know. But I just want to say tonight, thank you for the gentlemen that are here, because there are more men in this room than I have seen in a long time. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Ira and myself. So
That is the perfect segue to talk about the role of men.
Yeah.
The role even
Yes.
of non-binary members of our families, of our friend groups. Talk to us about allyship and
Yeah.
what role other folks play.
Yeah, it's really important because of a few different things. We work with men, whether we're in a partnership with them or not, whether we've got brothers, whether it's fathers. So, for men have to be part of this conversation for a couple of different reasons. They should know what's going on with us, and because a lot of them feel very confused or frustrated when they don't understand what's happening, especially when it comes to sex, when it comes to understanding, where we are, where our libido might go, why we might not feel like having sex at that moment, why we might not feel good if we're in the workplace, why we might be, tired one day or have to walk out of a meeting because we're sweating all over the place. Like there's a number of different reasons because there's so many different symptoms. And so at first when I started this, I was like, oh no, we just got to talk to the women and then we'll eventually get to the men. And as I realized I was talking more and more, men were coming up and saying like, hey, what can I do to help my partner? Or, I'm dealing with this at work, or I'm a boss at work. How can I help my employees? So I'm feeling very hopeful about that. So I get excited when men come to the table wanting to know more, and we're gonna trust me. We're gonna keep teaching them.
And we all have a role tonight is, when we go home or when we meet up with our guy friend,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I want to tell you about this that we may go through,
Yeah.
So they understand.
And they understand how young a lot of these symptoms, how young we can be when a lot of these symptoms start. Like I think when I read those words in my patient portal, I'm like, I'm in menopause? What? And we were actually standing at the airport and I was like, I'm in menopause. I don't know what this means. I'm too young for that. I was 49 at the time. Like the average age is 51, of course. So I had no idea. I thought it happened I don't know, when in your 70s. I had no idea. And so it was just a lack of awareness and very scary when you hear something like that. But, women should know that when we're talking about these perimenopause years, those are those rocky years of a lot of, chaos that happens during this time. Our hormones are all over the place. They're up, they're down, they're back and forth. And so it's important for women to know that. So when they are going through that time period, which, if we're lucky enough, we all will reach menopause, that they understand what they're going through and they don't feel like, oh my gosh, is there something really wrong with me? And look, you should go to a doctor, you should talk to somebody, you should make sure that this is what it is. But for the most part, these are very hallmark symptoms of perimenopause into menopause that you can at least be aware of.
Absolutely. You mentioned different kinds of women, and you really emphasize the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion in this conversation. Tell us about why it's important to understand what the symptoms are for women of color. Obviously, there's a lot of Latina women in this room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was something we talked a lot about in the documentary as well. It's important for a number of different reasons. All women come through menopause at different ages. For Black women, they can come into it a little bit earlier, and symptoms can be more intense and last longer. There are a number of different what we talked about before, issues that we have to be paying attention to. If you have hot flashes, an enormous amount of hot flashes all the time, that could be an indicator of something else long term. So that's what we've got to know, and we've got to talk to women where they are. We've got to figure out, their community and whether or not they're getting the resources, getting the answers, having the access. And so that's why it's really important to be so inclusive in this conversation and so aware of what's going on, so we can also help each other during that. Because I don't know. I wish somebody had looked at me and been like, hey, I think there might be something going on with you. And I don't think I would have been offended by it. I think I would have been like, thank you. I felt like I was going crazy. And so I think it's important for all of us to be aware of what's going on with one another.
Do you find in your research that there's more stigma in certain communities or more taboo in certain communities?
Yeah, I mean, the communities have talked to us about that, actually. And there is that stigma because of the fact that menopause is so wrapped up in aging. It's so wrapped up in aging. It's so wrapped up just in society as like this time when, you're not in your reproductive years anymore. And now a lot of women are, not feeling as relevant. And that's just not the case. But there are communities also where age and wisdom are revered, and those are amazing things to be a part of. And so I always want to make sure that we eventually, or I'm hopeful that we eventually get to that place where we do look at age like that, and we do look at women that have lived through certain things and had this kind of experience and see their wisdom and take advantage of it, versus go like, nah, they're not 20 something anymore.
Right, and we get excited, about the next great phase
Yes,
that's ahead.
I look at women like that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be like her. Like I want to be aging like her or healthy like that. But you've got to also know what you're dealing with during this time
medically,
too.
Absolutely.
Medically, absolutely.
So self-care, mindset, lifestyle shifts, those can make a big difference. For the women here, what are some of the most impactful changes that they could make right now?
Yeah, I think that's so important to walk away with something where it's not like, hey, good luck, and I hope you all get a doctor's appointment in the next 6 months. Like, I never wanted to be like that, and that's really why I wanted the book to be, read that way. Here's what's going on with all of us. Here are the symptoms you can watch out for. And then there's hormonal and non-hormonal solutions. Hormones might not work for everybody. And yes, you do need to talk to a healthcare provider to get information about whether or not you are somebody that can be eligible to do hormones. If you're not, though, those lifestyle changes you could do right now. You could focus on your sleep. You can focus on strength training. Protein is so important. I mean, I think we hear a lot about it right now, but protein and strength training are so important for bone health, because I mentioned it earlier. The last thing anybody wants to do is have a fall and break something or break a hip. So we've got to be aware of that. We definitely do. Sleep, extremely important, because when you come into this time in life, it's difficult. Your hormones are all over the place. Your estrogen drops, your progesterone drops. You're waking up at night, sweating at night. One foot's out of the cover, the other foot's, it's like chaos. The air conditioner is down to 65 degrees and you're like, it's still so hot in here. And those are real things. So I also talk a lot about nutrition in the book and stress management, because stress management's huge. Women during this time are dealing with changes at home. They might be dealing with empty nest. They might be dealing with relationship changes, work changes, elderly parents. There is a lot coming at us all at the same time, and you've got to find a way to also take that time for yourself. In any capacity, just take that time to pay attention to yourself, because if you're not taking care of your health, you're not going to be able to reclaim this part of your life.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned all of this, because it's things that we hear sort of separately,
Yeah.
but not tied to menopause per se. And I think it's important to make that connection.
I do too. And I like that you asked that. Like, what can you do today? Because you can start those things today.
So let's have a real moment of honesty, ladies. In a city like Miami,
Yeah.
where appearance is a big deal.
Sure.
They're like, You stress that acceptance is such a powerful part of this process, that change is inevitable.
It is.
How can women rethink, our diet, our nutrition, the way we look to support our bodies, rather than chasing our 20-year-old bodies?
Yeah, I'm the first to admit that it's not easy to change. I spent 30 years in television, every day like, oh my gosh, I've got to be my best 23-year-old self. Like I was always thinking about that, because it was a very youth-based industry. And so it was not easy when I was like, oh, those sleeveless dresses, I don't know. There was a lot of things that changed. My arms changed. I remember one night, I tell the story in the book, that I was coming home after doing the evening news, and a viewer wrote in and said, and I read it, which I shouldn't have done, but because it still traumatizes me. But they said, Tamsen, at your age, knees are not a girl's friend. Cover them up, please. I know. And so I was like, What? And by the way, that's not why they're covered. I still wear short dresses. I just want everyone to know, just tonight I happen to like this suit. So, but I do show my knees. But so I'm very aware that change is not easy. But I do also think this, like inevitably, my mother would have loved to get to 70. She died at 51 years old. Change is inevitable, and I would rather be able to live this long life than be chasing somebody that I was in the past. And so I think that I've really come to a place, and it took time. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because I saw some girl in an orange suit saying this, but it took real focus of me saying like, look, this is who I am now, and I'm really proud of it. And I did a lot to get here, and I've got a lot to give along with that. So I do really care about appearance and look, and I'm never going to say, like, oh, don't worry about that anymore. That's not important. It is important. It's all important. But I think you also have to embrace where you are right now, because there's something really beautiful about people that have that confidence from the inside, and you know who they are. You can feel them when you walk into a room, and they really shine. And I think that's who you want to be.
I love that. Very powerful. And it's really truly about identity.
Yes, of
Your
course.
identity doesn't have to be that 25-year-old or whatever.
No.
Be proud of your identity and don't let that define you, even though you also look great. But that doesn't have to
it
be
takes
what
a while
defines you.
to say like, okay, that doesn't define me anymore. My job doesn't identify me anymore. I am identifying, who I am now, and I'm deciding who that is in the world. And that's a really beautiful place to be able to come to, and I see women doing it every day, redefining who they are, pivoting in their careers, doing something else that they've really wanted to do for a long time, and just really stepping out. And it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see.
Purpose, pivot with purpose.
Yes.
So there's so much information out there, Tamsen. And you mentioned hormone therapy. There's alternative treatments, lifestyle changes that we talked about.
Yep.
How can women sort of cut through the noise and make the best choice for themselves?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, there's a couple of different things. First, I would say this. I would say there's no magical pill for menopause. Anybody who's promising a magical pill for menopause, don't buy that, because you don't need it. I think that's really important to note. I know there's a lot of people jumping into the business. I know there's a lot of interest in this business. But here's what I would say about it. I would say be aware of options. Hormones are one option, and a lot of women are able to take them and not taking them because they've been afraid of them for a very long time, because there was a study done 20 plus years ago that scared a lot of women that said, estrogen and causes breast cancer. That was essentially the headlines of that study. That has been walked back several different times. However, that has stuck in many women's heads. So get knowledgeable about what that is and see if that can work for you, because hormones can be life-changing for some women. If that is not an option, be aware of some of the options out there that are non-hormonal but might be able to help you with some of the things that are bothersome, especially when it comes to hot flashes. And I would also say that I would be aware that, I guess if I was looking out there right now, the lifestyle changes will never hurt you to do. And I do really think that the misinformation can be scary. And if you've got somebody that's putting that fear in you, it's not something to be fearful of. It's something to be educated about. And it's something that all women are going to go through. And there's not, just one easy fix to it.
2 more questions before we open it up to you ladies and gents. As we talked about in the beginning, it can feel like such an isolating journey.
Sure.
How can we build community around this topic and have more conversations like this?
Yeah, I mean, I love seeing a room like this, because I think it's so beautiful when people come together. There's such an energy of being open and raw and real and honest about something like this, because I didn't ever feel like I was allowed to do that. I didn't ever feel like I was allowed to be honest about my vulnerabilities, and when I finally unleashed that, I was like, it didn't stop. I just kept being more and more honest. But I think that there was something about that allows somebody else to do the same thing and somebody else to do the same thing. And that sense of community is really important. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said that she and her friends from college created something on their phone. Like, it used to be, I don't know, whatever the name of their group was. Now they call it the Hottie Hotline, because they're all going through perimenopause or menopause, and they're all talking, but they all feel really empowered by the fact that they're not going through it by themselves. And I think that there's something to that. I think if you feel like you're going through this and like, I'm all alone and something's wrong with me, and maybe I didn't do enough to prevent this from happening this way or this intensity, you can't help but feel isolated and can't help but feel awful and can't help but have that anxiety. And so I have never known a more true sense of community than I got to this place, and have met just incredible women. And we meet all over the country and continue to talk about it. And it's become something that it really gets me through. I just feel like I have that strength under my arms lifting me up.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's something magical that happens when women get together.
Oh,
And-
gosh,
and
yeah.
especially when we get together
Powerful.
around a topic like this that,
Yeah.
instead of making us vulnerable, it now gives us strength. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. Tamsen, for this movement that you've started to create community around this, and honestly to make women feel less scared about something that can be very scary, but now it's empowering.
Oh, I'm so happy. You know, I was when you told me earlier that you had started to talk to your mom about that, I was like, oh my gosh,
had
that's
no idea
that's like
what
the happiest
age.
thing in the world for me.
And
That made me
because
feel
I'm
so
going
good.
into perimenopause. I
Yeah.
had no idea what age my mother had been through menopause. My sister's here in the audience, by the way. She also read the book. She called me. She's like, I think I'm going through perimenopause. I'm like, I don't know. Let's call her mother. So again, like, it's also the importance of just having these conversations early.
Yes, and being aware of what's
yeah,
coming
yeah,
up, so you don't get,
absolutely.
you don't land on the floor.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ladies, the floor is yours. Who has questions? Raise your hands. We have mic runners that will come to you. We have
We're
one
going to
question
start over here.
Yes.
11 o'clock.
Hey, thank you
Hi.
so much. Hi. So thank you for raising the awareness on the topic. Very needed. Anything specific you want to share about symptoms or remedies? Just a little bit more, I guess, like tangible specifics on things to look out for and things we
Yeah.
can do to improve it. Just more specifics, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so symptoms come in all different forms, all different kinds of intensity, and every woman goes through something different. I might go through brain fog and hot flashes, and you might not be able to sleep, and you might say like, oh my gosh, I've got brain fog all the time. Like that's really tearing me apart. And so, I would say for me, sleep was the biggest thing that was really problematic because I was working at the time, and I was in the middle of just hustling. I was
Yeah.
hustling constantly, and I couldn't sleep, and I would go to work and I'd be like so tired all the time. And it was a tired, does anybody know if they're in perimenopause or menopause or want to share that? Yeah, okay. So that tired feeling where you're just like, I can't even, I'm on the outside looking in. So sleep is really where I would suggest kind of start that. And if you are interested in doing hormones, progesterone is something that's extremely important. And I want to also emphasize, I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you medical advice, but progesterone was a game changer for me. Magnesium is something that is also been something I've combined at night. I go to sleep at the same time now. I try to have a real bedtime and focus on my sleep first before anything else, because I couldn't even get to a doctor or even think about something like that until I got that under control. For me with brain fog, it was really getting more sleep and managing my stress, because I needed to have full focus to even deal with that. And brain fog really only went away for me with HRT. And then I would say with belly fat, which is also something that's been a real struggle, is paying attention to protein, which was never something I did. I'm a Gen X girl, so we got on a treadmill for an hour, and that's kind of about what our workout was. It wasn't hitting the weight room with heavy weights. And so those would be kind of the areas for real specific symptoms. And then belly fat with cortisol is something you got to pay attention to, with stress management too. The book goes through each of the symptoms, at least the 34 kind of hallmark ones, and then in the back there's a study that was done by a nutritionist out of Canada, and it's published work that she has of over 100 plus symptoms, because there are estrogen receptors all over the body. So there's no area that's really left out of it. So when we see hair loss, or we talk about skin that changes, or crepey skin, all of those are part of that estrogen loss.
Thank you
Tamsen-
so much for your question.
Tamsen, wouldn't you say that that's one of the areas, the fact that there's so many different symptoms, dozens of different symptoms, the lack of education or the lack of training in the medical field, you put all that together and most doctors are not able to really diagnose.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to the doctor initially, I was put on, and this was before said I was in menopause. I was put on Lexapro, and they said you're anxious because you're anxious, but it never helped anything else. It certainly didn't help me sleep. It certainly didn't help me with weight or anything. And so, so I do feel like there's a lot of frustration. I've talked to women that have gone through one doctor after another, or they felt their heart racing out of control because of the hot flashes, and then next thing you know, they're talking to a cardiologist. So, I do think that there's a lot of that misinformation. I look forward to the day that we have all different doctors that are really being educated with this, and it's what we set out to do with the M Factor, was to, the M Factor is only an hour long, even though there's no audience for it. We did want to make sure that we were helping educate some of the doctors that really didn't know, and so I've gone to speak, and I've had doctors come up to me and say, like, I'm an OBGYN, I have women coming in now with the documentary or the book, and I am learning about it now, so thank you. And so doctors want that information. By the way, I just want to say, here in Miami, you all have some incredible doctors. And in fact, in one in the room, Dr. Gila. So you've got some incredible doctors here. But if you don't feel like you have access to one or in the right area, I would also say that telehealth is a really great option because they are dealing with this day in and day out, and they're aware of those symptoms. So you're not going to. I always call it whack-a-mole with your symptoms. I don't want you to deal with sleep over here, and now I've got to go deal with brain fog, and oh my gosh, now I have anxiety, because that will make anybody feel like they're going crazy and that there's something wrong with them, and that's just not the case.
Is there a database of doctors that specialize in? Sorry.
Yeah, I actually have one on my website. We have a providers on the website that you can go in there and look for your zip code, and the Menopause Society.org also has one where you can go according to zip code. And then I would say, if I was going to recommend telehealth, I would say MIDI Health has done an incredible job in terms of being able to take insurance and help women. And I think Alloy Health is also a great option.
More questions? We have one over here in the front. If you could introduce yourself, we'd love to get to know you.
Hi,
Hi.
Tamsen.
Hi.
My name's Kara, and thank you.
Hi,
I've been
Kara.
following you on social for a really long time.
Oh, good.
And
Thank you.
made your smoothie years ago.
Oh,
so.
good. Thank you.
I was just curious your thoughts on the business of menopause. Sure. And I guess other than MIDI, which is on my radar, I haven't seen many brands that seem to really own the space or make a big impact. I'm just curious if you think there's any gaps or opportunities or products that you wish that were in the market.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think MIDI and Alloy are in that telehealth space, which I think is great. I think it's going to be interesting to see how AI plays a part with a lot of these things in terms of really helping, look at symptoms. Like the book has a symptom tracker. You can track your symptom, but I have a feeling that there's going to be more on the way that we're going to be able to do faster. I guess with regard to products, the one area that I do think that we're still looking at a lot of different things is, I look at the women that cannot take hormones. I look at the women that don't want to take hormones. I am an advocate for myself with that. I didn't think I could because I lost my mother to breast cancer. So I went into the doctor and I'm like, oh, I can't do that, because I just didn't have any information. And it turns out that I didn't have breast cancer myself, so I am able to do hormones. And even some women that have had that are now, being prescribed hormones. So I would say those non-hormonal options will be interesting to me. Veoza is one of those that's out there right now. There's another one on the market as well, but I'd be curious to see some other options for women so that women can have their symptoms treated, but non-hormonal options for them, along with those lifestyle changes. We see a lot of supplements on the market. I would say that, there's not a supplement that's going to cure anything necessarily, but a supplementation. If it's a magnesium, it's a vitamin DK2, if it's an omega, if it's a fiber, then those would be the areas I would look at for supplementation. I wouldn't necessarily look at supplements. It's like, here's a menopause pill that's going to solve everything. I don't necessarily know that that's going to be the answer yet. Does that help? Okay. Yeah.
We have a question here in the back. Hi.
Hi, ladies. My name's Perla.
Hi, Perla.
Hi, thank you so much for this talk and for bringing us all together. I have a question and I guess you could say a poll. So I am recently on hormone therapy, and I had a partial hysterectomy. So we didn't really know when I went into menopause or when it was starting. So with the sleep issue, so my doctor in California, my OBGYN of many years, put me on cream progesterone. and something's not working for me. The doctor here, I just started last week, oral progesterone. What's the difference, and what really works?
I have the difference between the two in the book, and I don't know, Dr. Gillo, do you feel like answering a question tonight in-house? Yeah, okay. But I will say this. I guess I will say for myself, the oral progesterone is, that's part of community. We met how many months ago?
We met in Las Vegas.
We met in Las Vegas at
yeah,
the
a few
world's
months
hottest menopause party. By the way, was anybody at the world's hottest menopause party that I threw?
It was
No?
amazing. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You have to come next year. We threw the world's hottest menopause party for free, so women can get information, and that's where Dr. Jill and I met. But yeah, so she's going to answer that question for you just because she's the doctor.
Hi, Perla. Nice to meet you. Topical progesterone cream, we know it doesn't really absorb that well, and so that is probably why.
Hello?
Hello. There we go. Oral. Higher. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Oral progesterone much better for sleep. For sleep, so I prescribe oral progesterone along with other versions of estradiol, but for sleep, the oral works better.
That will kick in. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you, doctor, so much. This is a part of community, as you mentioned. If you open up with each other, like, this is what I'm trying, what are you dealing with? Like, that's what tonight is also all about as soon as we get off stage.
Yeah,
Right?
and I do want to say one thing. You know, we mentioned hormones, but there is another hormone that I think always gets left out, which is vaginal estrogen, which is essentially safe for all women. And that is really something when we talk about sex, and we talk about libido, and when we talk about painful sex, which, you know, really can be a real thing during this time, that you should be aware of and definitely be asking about if you've got a doctor or you're going to see one.
So we have a question here and a question over there. If we can get them a mic.
Hold on.
Run, Pablo, run.
In there, Sidra.
I'm so happy you mentioned sex.
I got you.
Can we talk about sex? Is this a safe space to talk about sex?
Yes.
Very safe.
Yes.
I'm going to keep it real. I don't know. Well, I know a few of you, but not enough of you. But I'm going to keep it 1,000. I recently started the pellet, estrogen and testosterone, and I feel like a juicy peach. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I literally just had this I'm 54. I had a hysterectomy about 10 years ago. Maybe for the last 4 or 5 years, I've just been uninterested. And my amazing doctor here in Miami, I moved here about 4 years ago, and he changed my life with this whole pellet thing. Like, I had no idea about it. And within a week or two, I like a juicy peach. Is it me? Is it all in my head, or is this a real thing?
No, it's on your head.
Is this a real situation?
It is a real situation. Pellets will give you a lot all at once, so you just have to be aware of that. So not all doctors will prescribe.
I know.
Yes, okay. So that's why you're feeling juicy right now. In time, you would need those again, but you know, a lot of doctors prefer hormone therapy and testosterone. But you're feeling that because of the estrogen and the testosterone. I mean, testosterone is helping, I'm sure, with the low libido. Are you on vaginal estrogen too, or just the pellets?
Just the pellets.
All right.
And
Well, it's
also
working for you.
There's the pill I take at night.
A progesterone.
Yes.
Yes, a progesterone. So that's helping you sleep. So you're
Like a baby.
Like a baby. But that's the deal with the pellets. So the pellets are basically a influx of of testosterone, and that's what you're getting. And eventually that'll go down. They'll tell you to come in and get it.
Every 3 months.
Yeah, okay. So that's what it is. So some don't like to prescribe it because you get so much all at once and there's nothing you can do to regulate that. And so that's why most prescribe the hormone therapy. Did you ever go on regular hormone therapy? And that didn't
No,
work?
I went straight to the pellet.
Okay. you just went right in. But a lot of them would recommend, estrogen or estradiol patches, progesterone, and a topical testosterone, a cream or a gel.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, and I just want y'all to know that it changed my life. And I'm not getting paid for this, but for real.
Thank you, Sidra.
Thank you so much.
In the back here.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I had a similar experience to you, very difficult to get anything. I was seeing a cardiologist for 5 years. I was prescribed Zoloft for anxiety, and nobody put it together.
Yeah.
My doctor was a 70-year-old woman who told me the only thing that menopause brings is hot flashes. Everything else was not right. So you mentioned MIDI, and you see a lot of things online. I actually ended up having to lie and say, yes, I have terrible hot flashes just to get HRT prescribed to me. But you see online a lot of different places that offer HRT without prescriptions.
Yeah.
Are those telehealth avenues, or are they reputable? Are they things you should stay away from? What do you do when you feel like nobody's helping me?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation are those two companies, and the reason is because I know what they do and I know how they're trained, and I know they're training their nurse practitioners or their doctors. I can't speak for all of them, and there are a couple of other ones that are great too. Like Maven is another great one. There is Evernow, but I would say to be careful of anybody that's just saying like, hey, we're just giving out HRT every which way. You need to be aware of what you're getting, and you need to also be aware of how much you're getting, because you should be going in after you've gone into menopause for testing once you're on HRT, to be paying attention to what those levels are, especially if you wind up taking testosterone, which is not FDA approved, but it can be compounded for women. So I would be aware of that and just try to stay with the people that you're actually talking with somebody and getting a prescription for that versus just having somebody write it right off of online. I don't know the name of the ones you're talking about. If you want to tell me afterwards, you can, and I can look it over, or one of us can.
Staying in the back here.
Uh-huh. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining
course.
us. Have you read any novel studies on some of these newer pharmaceuticals like GLP-1s or holistic treatments like peptides, and seen any connectivity to using them as treatments for symptoms of menopause?
Yeah, it's funny. The second or third interview I did for the podcast was with a woman who wrote a book called The Ozempic Revolution, and she was talking about GLP-1s with regard to belly fat and menopause. And so I know that there are a lot of the providers out there that are talking about both of those things at the same time, whether it's with HRT and GLP-1s. And I don't know, Dr. Gilla, do you want to talk about GLP-1s or no? It's up to you. But they were not that popular when I was writing this, and this has just kind of been a whole influx of it. But I know a lot of the health companies, telehealth companies that we've been talking to are now going into prescribing those, along with different weight loss companies, obviously, like Noom, et cetera, that also have information about menopause. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tony.
Hi, Tony.
am so happy to be here. I have been dealing with this for a long time. And my grandmother had her third heart attack and passed away at 55. My mother went on cholesterol medication in her 40s, and now I'm 54, and my cholesterol has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And they've tried to put me on like statins, which have given me incredible muscle spasms.
Yeah.
And I've had all these tests. I wore a heart monitor. It's so frustrating going to these doctors because no one will say, oh, this is menopause related. And my cholesterol is extremely high, but I'm very healthy. I work out every day. I eat really clean, but my cholesterol is still high. And I noticed that when my estrogen level went from 300 to like 89, that's when my cholesterol shot up.
Very
and my
common.
doctor's like, oh, I'm okay with that. And I don't know if there's any research or any other things to do besides going on a statin and exercising and eating clean. And I've had I have no plaque on my arteries. I have no inflammation. So I really don't need to take a statin, but I really don't want to have a heart attack either.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't give you medical advice on that, but I can say that is not uncommon. I can say I had the same thing, and I went on hormone therapy, and that helped level things out. I had Mine was also thyroid and cholesterol. Those are two things that changed, things I'd never had a problem with in my life. Like I couldn't even believe it. I'd had low cholesterol for forever. And so I did go on hormone therapy, and all that changed with those levels. But I would, if you have a cardiologist, is that who you're talking to right now? You do have a cardiologist that's treating you? And do you have an OB or somebody else, or a cardiologist that can talk to you about hormone therapy as well, or no? Have they not? Oh, you're on both, and that's not changing anything?
No, I recently, I was doing the estradiol gel.
Yeah.
My number one symptom has been night sweats.
Yeah.
Night sweats. And so now, you have to beg. I had to go to increase it. I'm doing the patch and the gel, and I'm still having crazy symptoms.
Patch and the gel of estrogen?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk to you afterwards.
We're going right next door.
Brave through, my girl, brave through. Hi, ladies. Thank you for coming. My name is Renee. I'm so happy we're all having this conversation. This is amazing. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Soraya. You guys are awesome. So I'm going to bring you back to kind of a little bit of a sex question.
All right.
I mean, I also had a hysterectomy about 4 years ago. I've had terrible menstrual cycle since the very beginning, since I was 13. I'm from Toronto, so we're legally not allowed to until what they call geriatric reproductive age or whatever. And so now, minus, the baby-making organs, how do you think, and we were talking about including the men in the conversation and educating men on, bracing themselves for that back and forth. I'm free now. I'm not gonna worry about no babies. I'm trying to get it out here. How do you, but you want to have those honest conversations with these potential partners, and you want to open that up so that you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions, or maybe this is a man's answer to give us, about how we can broach that and keep that conversation going with potential partners, and making sure you have healthy conversations in your relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wrote I wrote a letter in the book to my partner, just because it was such a, I think it can be very uncomfortable, because we're trying to figure out what's going on with us. Now we got to go and explain it to somebody else. But, I think that the only way, whether you're with somebody long-term or you're dating and you're dealing with this, or just out there meeting people, I think you guys got to be really upfront about it. And I don't think that it's such a weird conversation anymore, because it is in the zeitgeist, because we are talking about it. And I don't think that saying to somebody like, listen, I hit menopause, I just want you to know that sex is not always comfortable, if that's the situation, or I need some help. I'm going to be doing, I need vaginal estrogen, or I need lube. And it's not because don't take offense to it.
Yeah.
So lube is not something that we just used for play. That should be something that every woman at this age is having that conversation about, and figuring out what's most comfortable. So the open dialogue, the open conversation, I wrote just kind of this letter to be able to broach that conversation is really important. And I hope more men are, guys, are you comfortable with us saying like, hey, I'm not feeling good about having sex right now. I have no libido. Totally. What? Yeah? Totally. Good. I mean, what's your answer going to be if I...
Absolutely not.
I dare you. But I do think that men are appreciative of hearing that honestly, instead of just thinking it's something wrong with them. And I'm hopeful the more we have this conversation in rooms, and the more men we bring into it, the better off we're going to be.
We need to educate them.
We got to educate them.
Educate them on this topic. Pablo, how much more time do we have?
We have a couple more questions.
Okay, we have a question there in the back.
Lisa, and then we're coming to you.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us. I'm part of the Faena Rose team, and we've been excited for a long time about this conversation. So you mentioned when you were doing research for the book and the film that you encountered cultures that really honored and revered women of a certain age. Can you share a little more about that and what we might learn from them?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I looked around and I thought, like, wow, I've always, I was raised around my grandmother for a long time, and I guess I didn't think of the fact that my parents always wanted us to, like, think that, she's the one you kind of go to for information. And I guess I didn't realize that that's not what we really do anymore, or that I've seen. But there are some different cultures that really feel, and rightfully so, that a woman that's gone through these kind of changes should be revered, and there's a wisdom and there's a knowledge. And it doesn't mean because she's not the one that's having babies that she doesn't have anything more to offer out there. And so I'm hopeful that as we have this conversation more and we see more women that are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old that are doing incredible things and beyond, we start to have more respect and more adoration for that generation, instead of thinking that we've got to fight our whole lives to stay 20 and 30 years old. And I think that's going to help elevate this conversation and move it along a lot faster than where it's been so far, because it's really been in the shadows. And I, for one, had no idea about that. So I feel like every time I have a conversation, every time I talk to young women about women that are older, I had a conversation earlier with somebody who was saying, I look to older women to see, what I want to be like. And I think that that's where that conversation starts.
We have another question over here and then over there.
So, in terms of testosterone, knowing that it's not FDA approved and that you have to get it from a compound pharmacy and you're just hoping they mix it right, because apparently there are concerns about, because they are mixing it, are they going to do it right? Do you have any concerns about, are we the generation of guinea pigs for testosterone?
Of getting what?
Guinea pigs.
Oh, no, I don't think that. But you can also do testosterone gel, which is an FDA gel that you just put a small amount on, which would be a tenth of a dose of what a man's is. But testosterone use has gone on. I don't think of us as guinea pigs. It's just not been as common or as talked about, I think, as it has recently. Remember, we had testosterone. It wasn't like we didn't have it before. It's just that it peters off with everything else, and so it's replacing. They don't like to say hormone replacement therapy anymore, but it is replacing what we had. So I don't think about that. I think an overuse would be a concern. I do understand the compounding issue. I do understand that you've got to find somebody reputable to do that and make sure that it's safe, and that's why I'm always hesitant to recommend too many places, except the ones that I do believe in, that are not just drive-through pharmacies, which is not what we want.
Thank you for your question. And then we have a
I
question.
think we've got one more over there.
Here.
Hi, I'm Sanjaya, and I'm a sexologist, and I'm a professor of medicine at our local university, at the University of Miami. And we talk a lot about non-hormonal options, and I call it PMP, right? Peri and premenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. That's my acronym. When I'm talking to all of the men who lead our medical school.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to get them to buy Emcella and to invest in some of the more non-hormonal options. So I haven't read your book yet, and I'm very excited to do so. And I'm wondering, in there, do you talk about there's a lot of clinical studies that have been published on Emcella, the O-Shot, Mona Lisa laser, and even Addie, I was gonna say. So do you dedicate specific portions? And then maybe you could just give us your little perspective.
Yes, of course. We talk about all the different, I do want to say this. For all the pills that are out there for men, there are very, very few options for women, as you know. So hopefully there's another area. You can, there's another business. But, Addie is a little pink pill that was a company started by Cindy Eckert. And that's, something that few women are offered or know about. So yes, the book does have a chapter on sex, and it does talk about the different options available, along with prescription options that are available. And I'm glad you're talking about that. And I think that I guess my concern is when women go into the doctor, I don't necessarily know if the question they're asked is like, how's your sex life? And so then we're left to struggle and try to figure out whether we feel comfortable talking about it, who we talk to it about, and whether or not there's something wrong with us because we have to go talk about it. So I do list all of that in the book and all the different options and different ways, that you can talk to the doctor. I really created the book to be a reference guide and a resource for you. I'm not a doctor. I interviewed doctors for it. it. I went through, I can't even tell you how many studies. But what I wanted to make sure is if you're dealing with brain fog, it's brain fog proof. It's very simply written so you can drill down and say, like, look, I'm not having problems sleeping, but sex sucks right now. Or my sex life is great, but I can't think worth anything. Or I need help when it comes to figuring out if I'm in perimenopause. And so that's how the book was written. So it does have all of those. I go down the list of all of the different options that are available because I really want, there's not a one size fits all, and every one of us is going to have something different that we're dealing with. So I wanted it to be applicable to everybody, whether it's pre, if it's peri, if it's menopause, or if it's post. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for that. And this is actually my question to close us out.
Yeah.
How can people find you and find out more about your work and this movement?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being so open and honest with your questions, because I know it's like you don't usually walk in all dressed up and be like, all right, let's talk about my sex life or I need testosterone. So I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. It just helps further this conversation in so many ways. I am on social media at Tamsen Fadal. The book has a QR code to go to the website for a bunch more free resources, including a man's guide that you can download there to help have a conversation with men, a symptom tracker, recipes for, if you're talking about belly fat. I have a hot girl menopause smoothie. So all that's free. All of that's on the website. Yeah, I thought that would be fun, right? And so that's our smoothie that we start off every morning with. And I also have a podcast that I started about a month ago called The Tamsen Show, and anywhere you get your podcast, if you want to download it. And if you have suggestions, we talk a lot about menopause. We talk about other things too. We just did an interview about GLP-1s. Halle Berry came on and talked about her story. We're doing a lot about narcissism, relationships, divorce, dating. I do have a section in the book on relationships, because I think it's really important to note that I had gone through a divorce myself, and a lot of us are back out there dating and going through menopause or perimenopause, and so it was really important for me to bring that up as well, because we need to be part of that conversation. So that's where you can find me.
Big round of applause for all of you ladies and for our very own Tamsen Fadal.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. I want to thank Tamsen. I want to thank Mariana. I want to thank you all, as Tamsen said, for being open to this conversation. And I think this is what needs to happen more. We need to keep talking about it. Destigmatize this, I think, is really, really important. Thank you, everyone. We can continue this over more cocktails.